Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone, and welcome to Wealth Pathways, the Affluence Science Insights Podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Marie Stella, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. With the sheer growth of influencer marketing and its prominence in today's digital landscape, our social media pages are now saturated with ads, especially product sponsorship and brand deals. In fact, nearly half of all consumers make purchases each month because of influencer posts, and the influencer marketing industry is expected to reach a record high of $33 billion in 2025, according to Statista. Now, with that in mind, the impact of influencer marketing is pretty hard to ignore. But today we're here to investigate if influencer marketing is really a must-have for modern brands and how to make it work for your business. So joining us on this episode is digital marketing lecturer Kristen Marshall, who is currently based at Heriot Watt University's Edinburgh Business School. Kristen has a wealth of experience teaching across various marketing subjects, from digital marketing to marketing research and even global strategy. And additionally, her doctoral work explored how foodies make use of social media influencers to inform their food-based identities and food choices. So we're thrilled to have her here with us today. Welcome to the show, Kristen.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure for me too. I find your doctoral work so interesting. But before we begin, do tell us a bit about your background and what sparked your interest in digital marketing.
Oh, thanks. Background, how far to go back? Right. Well, so my first degree is in graphic design, and I really like, how to strategically communicate with people and how we do that with not just messages that we craft, but also like the unintentional messages that get put through and how people, especially online, can kind of co-create meaning. And we communicate in all new ways. Like brands used to send us advertisements on mass communication platforms, and now we have social media where we can speak back. And that creates a whole different element of conversation and a flavor a new flavor to the message. So I really was interested in digital marketing and how just how the internet changed the world, I guess, as well. As an older millennial / Gen X, I guess I'm that Zennial age cohort. I didn't grow up with a computer in my house, so it was something that kind of I watched happen. And social media, for good or ill, has just kind of had a big impact on how we communicate, how we live our lives. So I think when I decided that I wanted to be a university lecturer and decided that in order to do that, I needed to get a PhD, that was kind of the area that I looked into.
Yeah, that's a pretty wise choice. I mean, for going to be a professor, you kind of have to do that. I do relate to that to a certain extent because I did grow up with a computer in the home, but it was kind of like one of those things where it was still considered a luxury, whereas now for a lot of us, it's a basic necessity. Some of us even have 2 or 3 different like laptop or personal computer devices. So yeah, it's really interesting to see how far we've come and how dependent we're on it. We are on it. But before I go too far into that, I'd love to know what is influencer marketing? What are some examples that we may have observed?
Okay. Well, influencer marketing can be a number of things. So it's anytime that a brand or even an influencer themselves uses a platform um, to kind of promote something, a product, service, experience. And influence can be used in different ways. So they can kind of be used to co-create and partner with brands where they create their own new thing. That tends to happen quite a bit with the celebrity influencers who have a wider reach. They have more audience, but they might have less perceived authenticity as a result of that wider reach. Or we hire an influencer as a brand to try and reach an existing niche population. And like, this is one of the trends that's kind of emerging with influencer marketing. Like Hootsuite kind of said that this is one of the big trends going forward, that we're not looking at macro influencers, the big guys who have like huge followers, but we're looking at the micro influencers who have smaller followers because they tend to connect really well with those followers. So, they work for them. They really want to engage with them. They want to hear what they have to say, but they also tend to have that kind of niche following. So in my area with food, if you want to promote a new food brand that's local to a particular market, you want an influencer who's local to that market. So you want to potentially choose somebody who's not your big name. Like in Australia, your Tin Deets, or in the UK, maybe Deliciously Ella or Amelia Freer. You want to choose somebody who might have that more local spin, but also has those unique kind of food values, because they position themselves very astutely. So influencers will kind of take over these niche aspects of the internet, and they'll develop stances in a lot of ways that are aligned to a particular set of values that they communicate to their audience, and that their audience probably shares to some degree.
Yeah, that's an excellent preface for our topic for today. But before we go further into detail, I would love to get to know you a little bit better. So this is Have You Met Kristen? Now, during this segment, I will be doing it rapid fire style. It's an icebreaker section of sorts. And this will mostly be about what you've found to be the most influential in your life. So do answer these questions within a few words if possible.
I agonized over these. I agonized over them because they're like, distill it down to one. And I'm a lecturer. Like, saying short answers is not my strong suit, but we'll do our best. Okay.
Yeah,
let's go.
We'll do our best. And we'll all be here judging. No pressure.
Okay.
All right. First up, book.
Bible.
Movie.
This one was hard. For a long time, it was a movie called Big Fish. So I'm going to go with that one, Big Fish.
Podcasts.
This one. I don't have much exposure to podcasts, and this one is one that I've listened to a wee bit to get familiar. So I'm going to say this one.
Hey, we'll take that. Role model.
Too many to name. Genuinely, I've been so blessed with some wonderful people in my life. I think I'm going to have to say just different members of my family. And actually, I've worked for some incredible women. So I think the women that I've worked for who've all, it's been very rare where I've had a boss who hasn't been a mentor to me.
Yeah. My advice was going to be that pick the one that will be able to make your life the most difficult. Now, what about a course or class that you've taken that has stuck with you to this date?
So this is probably influenced somewhat by the fact that the professor recently passed away. But in my first degree, I took a class on typography. And it was like a whole class dedicated to typography. And just the way that he got us to notice differences in fonts was genius. And like, I've kind of looked at his example. I thought I'd like to teach like that one day. Like, it was very much, he didn't explain it. He showed up two different things and says, what's wrong with this? And as somebody who'd never studied type, it was like, what do you mean, what's wrong with it? But like, he got the message across. It was brilliant.
Yeah, sounds really interesting. And my last question for you is, what is the most important lesson that you've learned from all of these?
Oh gosh. Figure out what you want and then go with the flow. because I think you plan things out, but actually sometimes the best opportunities just come in um, when you're not expecting them, and you can't just fight against things all the time. Like, you just have to go with the flow.
Yeah, life is unplanned. Deal with that.
Yeah, and if something doesn't exist that you want, make it. Like, yeah,
that's actually the best opportunity to do that, is if something doesn't exist. I have a long list, but
you're gonna change the world then, Marie.
Yeah, self-cleaning bed sheets. Here we go.
Oh yeah, please. And my son is desperate to invent teleportation. He's like, I hate walking. We need to be able to teleport, Mom.
Yeah, with my media degree, I'm gonna create some self-cleaning bed sheets. Thank you for
Please
sharing
do.
all of that. Thank you for sharing all of that with us, Kristen. It's been a pleasure getting to know you a bit better. Now let's move on to the interview and talking about whether influencer marketing is really necessary. But before we dive right in, I would love to get your definition of affluence. What do you think affluence is?
Oh, so you're going to get me off on a tangent, but we'll try to keep it focused. So, affluence, I, it's either a showing or I like to define it also as a feeling of having plenty. So having more than enough. And I think that one of the big dangers of social media is that we look at what others have and we measure up and we think we don't have enough. And I think that's really dangerous because, like, I challenge you to go and look at wealth calculators, like world wealth calculators, put in your salary, put in your income, and see where you fit on that scale. Because you are probably, if you're watching this podcast, if you're listening to this podcast, you are more than likely like higher up on that scale than you think you are. And I just think, like, in my head, if I've have enough money that I can go out and buy food or clothing for my kids as they grow out of them, I am incredibly wealthy. But I think social media kind of fools us into thinking, no, wealthy is the private jet. Wealthy is, the luxury car. Wealthy is the luxury things. And actually, that's not what wealth is. And that's not what affluence should be defined as, I don't think. But also, this kind of goes back to like older times, and like we can kind of argue that we're in a consumer-based society where we do develop our identities based on what we have and what we buy and how we present ourselves. And there are people who fight back against that in different alternative ways, but like we are very much in a consumer-based society where we kind of define ourselves in a lot of ways by what we buy.
No, yeah, for sure. Like I, I have worked really, really hard to cut down on my consuming and being a bit more minimalist in the lifestyle sense, not the aesthetic sense. But even so, like I still have material around me that I've kept because I felt represented by it, or I've seen myself or like my values in those things. So all in all, even if I cut down on how much I consume, I'm still a consumer at heart. Yeah. But on the other hand, with regards to digital marketing, what is your definition of that?
So this one is a bit easier to define. It's just, and I've looked at different definitions from the Academy of Marketing and Digital Marketing Institute. Basically, it just includes all marketing activities that take place online. Leverages a range of tactics, including search engine optimization, paid advertising, social media marketing, etc. And that's from the Digital Marketing Institute. And unlike traditional media, it offers a much wider range of measurability. So again, that's another strength of digital marketing. We lose control of messages if we use influencers, but we gain authenticity of message. We lose, we risk having a bad reaction from consumers on social media, but we gain the ability of a message to travel on its own organically. So there are pros and cons there, but with the information and data gathering, that's the real magic of digital marketing, because we can track more information than we ever could before. We can track where consumers are coming from. We can track more information about them because our digital footprints leave a lot more information than just walking into a store does. So it's a really kind of interesting area.
Yeah. And how would you describe the relationship between affluence and digital marketing, whether, it's intended or an unintended kind of relationship?
Well, marketing is the mechanism by which we kind of make goods and services available to people. So in that way, it's kind of embedded in it. It is a mechanism to buy and sell things, to make things profitable, to communicate about around things for the expressive purpose of making that sale or building that brand up. So in that way, it's kind of entwined and embedded.
Yeah. And what is the importance of digital marketing when it comes to building a successful business?
Mm. I think it depends on the business. Like, I genuinely think that it depends on the business. But even so, I had a meeting the other week with a local firm that are based in just outside of Edinburgh, and they do kind of pick your own and everything else. Shout out to Craigie's if you're ever in the neighborhood. They're a really great family fun day out. Um, but yeah, they were talking about the impact of digital and social media, um, which you just kind of think, well, they're a rural offering. Um, they're very local, but even they reach their customers online. So, like, I think you kind of can't afford to ignore it now.
Yeah, like one example I think I can think of is like Google Maps, like listing your business on Google Maps is a huge factor for food establishments in particular, where they depend a lot on food traffic, right? But that's not typically seen as like a like a part of digital marketing, I think. So tell us more about like the different aspects to digital marketing. What are the more like fundamental ones where people often like business owners tend to go like these are the first few things to set up and to get right, and then what are the more supplementary ones?
Yeah, I think so. Like, marketing kind of has this 7 P's framework, which talks about like product, price, place, promotion, people, physical objects. Oh, I'm blanking on the last one. But the idea with that framework is that it covers all aspects of marketing. So digital marketing, you kind of pull on the same thing and say, okay, well, digital marketing um, helps us set distribution networks, helps us devise pricing, helps us kind of understand our consumers better, helps us communicate to the consumers, helps us track what they're doing. So it encompasses all sorts of different aspects. I think for small businesses, becoming findable online, as you've mentioned, Marie, is really key. So getting that digital footprint up and running, and like, even not just for local businesses, but for individuals, and like anybody who's like currently studying, who's thinking, oh, how do I make a mark out there? Just start by getting your LinkedIn page up to date. I'm convinced that the way that you guys found me was that I had recently updated my staff pages and my social media to have like the more recent achievements. And in doing that, I thought, oh, I've got to get better at doing this more regularly to make myself visible. And for me, I have to get on more social media platforms as well, because I'm a digital marketer. Only being on Facebook is a bit of a, come on now, you need to move past this. Um, so I think for small businesses, it's that idea of getting your space in that digital map set out. Google is powerful. It is the main search engine. We can't afford to ignore it. So yes, absolutely, Google Maps. But then also, especially for smaller brands, like, you're going to be working fairly small scale. So think small. Like, you're not going to be posting every day. You're not going to be posting even maybe every week, maybe every month or every quarter is a more realistic target. And then you can focus on different types of content that you can post. So look at what's tracking with local audiences. Maybe look at influencers at competitor brands, see what they're doing well online, and then see if you can emulate that a wee bit. Another thing that I think, and research kind of shows that businesses tend towards the informational. So they'll post information about their products or their services or about them, but it's purely informational. And actually, that's not the type of content that usually gets a lot of traction online. Like entertaining content tends to get more views, more engagement than content that's purely informational. However, recent trend, and that when I say that informational content doesn't get as much views, I'm actually talking specifically to research that Ashley and Tudin did, which was ages ago, like 2016. More recently, an emerging trend that like kind of Hootsuite and other digital marketing areas have kind of identified is that we want to learn online, and content that is engaging and teaches us something gets a lot of traction. So if you're a smaller business and if you can get content that will teach people something, that might be the way to go. But don't just think about the content, think about how you're going to track the engagement of that content, how you're going to have a conversation with people online, and how you're going to follow up with that. So I think one of the major, I think that there are two main issues that smaller businesses especially face with digital marketing. One, it's intimidating. They don't know where to start, and they're afraid to kind of put a foot wrong. Which I don't think that they need to be, because sometimes genuinely all press is good press.
Yeah, I do have an example of what you've just shared with us where there's an Australian brand here called Fate, and they sell women's clothing, and the USP is largely versatile kind of clothing, essentials, and a good sizing range. And the brand actually, well, the business owner, she posts a lot of content that isn't just about like the brand itself, but kind of adjacent to it, and kind of shedding light on how the business runs on the back end, and kind of sharing resources for smaller businesses as well. So most recently, I saw this actually last night, I think, where she took people through the new office that they got, and why they're renovating, what they're renovating to, what went into all these decisions. And it has been absolutely blowing up because everyone, like, everyone's just like, wow, we never get to see this like behind the scenes thing. And additionally, what I've noticed is that she's also almost created characters in her team, like on the social media front, where this particular person is known for kind of showing up at the end of the video for like a one line one line one a punchline, a one liner punchline.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Difficult mouthful, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that also grabs people's attention, and it makes them feel emotionally connected to the team, to the brand, as like an entity on its own, like a person almost. Do you have any case studies or examples of your own?
Yeah, and what you picked up on there is really interesting as well, because we have different types of engagement. Like we can be emotionally engaged, we can be cognitively engaged. You know, we could be behaviorally engaged, and those are all different things, or they can be different things. But if you can get all of them in one, then you've got some real punch. Yeah, actually, John Lewis is a brand, and I think they're UK based. I'm not sure if they're kind of spread out anywhere else. Sorry, John Lewis, if you are, but they're kind of like a higher end luxury type department store. That they've started really harnessing their employees as influencers, which I think is actually quite savvy, because like the employees are the ones who like know the products, know the brands, and then can like kind of like one of the employees, I can't remember the guy's name, it's somebody John Lewis. He actually like will show how furniture can be staged in his home from John Lewis. And it like has lots of benefits because you've got a really engaged employee there, somebody who's like actually really invested in this brand now because their name and their status is associated with your brand. So, it's got some mutually beneficial things there. So I thought that was a really neat example
Yeah.
of good engagement and using an influencer in a different way, like growing your own.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And on that note, what are the key factors that you think entrepreneurs should consider when developing a digital marketing plan?
Oh gosh. I think audience is one of the things. I think, and also consider like I think some people think, well, we need to spend a lot of money on this, and you can spend a lot of money online advertising. It can get away with you. Um, but I think actually earned word of mouth is a really good way to go. So like even just building up, okay, where do we have influence? Where do we have contacts that we can like kind of leverage? Do we have an interesting story to tell? Um, could we get people involved with telling that story? Um, and kind of looking at how did we develop this? Like my kind of area is communications. So like I'm not going to be able to tell you how to work out like sales channels um, and pricing strategies because that's not really my area of expertise. But my area would more be like the communication plan that you're going to kind of develop online, how you're going to target, how you're going to communicate. So I think my tip there would just be realistic and reasonable and don't beat yourself up because I think it can become one of those things where it's always looming in the back. I've not done this. I've not done this. I've not done this. Post on whatever channel you want. Just do one post, introduce the business, get it up and running, and then you can go from there. And I think the idea of like introducing your key players is a good one. So like, yeah, like Clarkson's Farm even, which is a show in the UK with Jeremy Clarkson, who's a character, um, sometimes problematic character. He hired a farm manager temporarily who liked to post her content on TikTok. So she'll do the harvest, be in her tractor, and be posting TikTok videos to like farmer TikTok, um, which I just thought that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that so much. So, from what you've seen, how necessary is influencer marketing for a successful digital marketing plan?
I think it's more important in some areas than others. So I think if you have a niche product and you're trying to launch it, or if you have a product that's already existing that you're trying to break into new markets for, or you're trying to broaden your reach, or you recognize that you already have kind of a bit of a cult following that you can that you could potentially make use of, then I think influencer marketing is really important. Um, Areas where it's less important are like a lot of brands will use influencers and like not use them really well, or will work with anybody, even like a celebrity stroke influencer, like when Pepsi did that horrible advert with Kylie Jenner. Like it was almost like they were doing it just to get that name, but like there was no real substance there, and the public backlash. So I think it can be really important to work with influencers where you want that niche, where you want their audience, um, where they already occupy a space where they might even be talking about your brand or your brand's area. Then I think you shouldn't be ignoring them. But otherwise, I think it's a purely proceed if you think it would be a worthwhile investment for you.
Yeah, I have seen some discourse online about how, sometimes brands have really strict, I guess, guidelines or like very, very, very strict boundaries as to what can happen or how a certain like advertisement with a or brand deal with an influencer should go, and it has to be like their way or the highway, and it has to stick to this perfect thing, and how it often ends up looking more inauthentic, and just not as emotionally effective, not as compelling, because it doesn't gel as well with the influencer. So what are your thoughts on, making sure that something does adhere to, the influencers, I guess, their own branding as well?
Yeah, I think you have to acknowledge that one of the strengths of influencers that is that they are going to bring their own flavor and they're going to appeal to their audience. That's why you work with an influencer. But one of the drawbacks of that is that you lose control. So there is a loss of control, and this is like, a textbook. The textbooks say that is one of the drawbacks to working with influencers. You lose control to a degree. So I think brands have to kind of acknowledge that that is going to be an issue. And I've worked with we've done live briefs with social media marketing agencies who have kind of said one of the ways that you overcome that is to do your research on the influencer. Like, make sure that this influencer is somebody that you want to work with, that they don't like. You have to kind of weigh up what are the risks of working with this person. And, we don't live in a zero sum world. There will always be risks involved with anything. So, what are the risks involved with working with this person versus what are the benefits? And make sure that they have a good match with your brand values and that, like, they're saying things that you want to say. So, like, my area with food, veganism, you want to get like debates online and get people arguing, mention veganism. Like, the haters will come out in droves. And you just want to make sure that you're partnering with somebody who's going to handle that in a way that is true to your brand. So you don't want the vegan influencer who's like, I have a friend who's on Facebook who's, an acquaintance who kind of posted something which was like, go vegan or F off. I was just like, oh, that's quite a line to take.
Yeah, that's a statement.
Yeah, you probably don't want to be working with that person because, like, it's very much like my way or the highway, and you just think, oh, that's divisive. So that's the best thing that brands can do, I think. Do your research. If you want to work with an influencer, do your research. Just watch that person online for a bit. Go into their comments, drill down, see how they respond to people. Like, do actually a bit of a deep dive on what they do. Yeah, you want to look at engagement stats and whatever else with their audiences, how many followers they have, fine. But, like, again, it's not quantity, it's quality in a lot of cases. So you want to find somebody who's going to, like, have that conversation in a way that is true to your values. So you find somebody who matches with your values.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And from what you've seen, what are some digital marketing tactics that have been potentially overlooked in place of influencer marketing?
Oh, um, I think it's just the basics of getting that presence right online, genuinely. Because, like, with how search algorithms work, you kind of have to be active and complete. So, like, if you're on a space, like, work out what are the kind of completement measures for that platform. So, like, would it help for you to have a profile picture of your business? If so, get it up there. Like, you want to be searchable. If it would help to have a Google listing for your business, get it up there. But that's the type of thing that takes time, and, like, you're kind of learning and navigating as you go, and it shifts because how we search for content one week is not how we search for content the next week. When I first started doing my research, it was, bloggers were the way to go because they were the ones who had that audience already. They were the influencers online. And then it merged and it became influencers. And we used to really follow content that was written or pictures. And then all of a sudden it shifted a few years ago where video became the main searchable function. And now, like, TikTok changed the world in terms of that. And by world, I
Yeah.
mean, like, the digital space. So it's always, always changing. So, like, you can't be perfect, but just even doing little things just to try to keep up is a good thing to do.
Yeah, and it can often feel like you're doing so much for so little immediate payoff as well, because you're doing all these things. You're not going to get a customer tomorrow if you set up a Google listing today, right?
Although you might do, because that
You
person might
might,
not have been
yeah.
able to find you yesterday and they can find you today.
Yeah,
So,
wise
and
words.
that's the type of thing that it's hard to track, because like you don't necessarily know where people are coming from unless you're asking them, and depending on your business, you might not be asking them directly. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
think it really is just the basics, and getting, and if you can get a presence on social media as a business, as a brand, and look at how other brands do it and see, how does that work? Like Aldi, I don't know if you're familiar with Aldi.
Yes, we love Aldi. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man, whoever's running their social media is genius. Like shout out to the Aldi social media guys. Like I've seen their stuff, especially like on Facebook or Instagram. Like they are quite clever. They're cheeky and sassy, and actually they hit it just right, because that's the kind of brand that they have, and just oh, they're brilliant. Like I highly recommend checking out Aldi.
Yeah.
My phone's going to feed that to me now because it's listening and it's going to think Aldi, Aldi, Aldi.
Yeah. Oh my God. Tell me about it. But actually, to circle back to what you were saying before about how a lot of people overlook the basics, and that is just really really important. I want to add to that to say, as a consumer, it really bothers me when I see an Instagram ad. And I'm curious about it. I want to learn more about it, but I'm not ready to like take the next step and go to the website. In particular. And I would just want to check out what's on their profile. I just want to see, like, get a little bit more information. I just want some pictures. And they don't have an Instagram profile. It bothers me a little bit. I'm not judging. I'm not judging. I understand Instagram is not for everybody, but it makes me want to turn back around.
That tells me that you're younger than me, Marie. Because yeah, yeah. And I think like brands should also be aware that different age cohorts have different platforms that they're kind of typically on. So if you want to reach like somebody who's like, the gray dollar, the retired age, then Facebook is still the way to go. If you want to reach somebody who's slightly younger than, Facebook stroke Instagram, and then you get into like Instagram slash TikTok, and then TikTok slash YouTube. YouTube, especially for the younger ones. My son is obsessed with YouTube content, and actually his older brother was obsessed with YouTube content too. So, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I was also curious about how with the rise of influencers and influencer marketing, there has also been a massive growth in influencer drama, which we did talk a little bit about before we started recording. And this has been said to like potentially hurt brand PR, right? But like you said before, all press is good press. But
potentially,
what
yeah.
yeah, potentially. But what should entrepreneurs or businesses be prepared to do in such cases?
Oh gosh, I think you kind of avoid the drama as best as you can. You kind of state what your values are. You state what your mission is. You make it really clear. If it's something really controversial that you need to take a stance on, then you need to take a stance on it. Like anything to do with an ism, racism, sexism, misogynism, that you get on that and you make it very clear what your stance is. Knowing that you might alienate people and knowing that you might start a bit of a firestorm, but if you can, just keep quiet and hope it blows over. Because genuinely, I was talking to small business owners who have kind of said, "Yeah, we had this bad review, or we had this, and the news picked it up, or whatever else." Um, but in a lot of cases, they'll kind of say, "But actually, we ended up seeing a spike in sales around the same time." So even though the online drama wasn't pleasant, and it was nonsense, and it didn't actually reflect our brand, it actually gave us visibility that we otherwise wouldn't have had. So in that way, it can be good, but it's not pleasant to have somebody speak, either
Yeah.
misrepresent you online, or talk about you online in a negative way. But we can't control these conversations, and I think we kind of have to realize actually it usually comes out in the wash. You just kind of have to stay the course, be really clear what you stand for.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for sharing your expertise with us on that. I was also actually curious about your doctoral research, which
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned at the start of the podcast. And it was kind of about how food, the food community or foodies base their food choices around. Sorry, actually, could you remind me what it was?
Yeah. So it was about digital foodscapes, kind of looking at how foodies use food influencers to negotiate their food values and food-based identities.
Right. Yes. So, what was an interesting fact that you uncovered from that, and what can we learn from it?
Yeah. So in the area of food, so my research looked at consumers who were kind of self-identified foodies. So people who have an interest, a sustained interest in food. So these are people who aren't just like learning about food, although they learning about food is a passion. They already kind of have that interest there, and they appreciate good food. Um, so one of the things that we found that was surprising at the time was, and more research has since come out that kind of shows that influencers have limitations, was that these influencers weren't particularly good brand advocates for foodies. Don't anybody listening, don't take that as a blanket statement, because with qualitative research and with social sciences, it's really important to understand the context before you apply research willy-nilly. So in this case, because the food-based consumers already had really set ideas around food, because they already had places where they would go shopping for food, and they had routines around food, and they had their own values around food, they were less easily swayed than maybe somebody who's just starting out learning would be more easily swayed. Uh, and in fact, we only found one instance where one of the foodies had actually bought a particular branded product from an influencer, and they bought this particular product based on not from the influencer, based on an influencer's recommendation, because it fit with their goals. So it was a diet-based product. It was called PB Fit, which is basically powdered peanut butter. It's basically a way to get the protein without the fat.
Right. Yeah.
And for people who like the taste of peanut butter but who don't care about the texture, I guess it was a way to get that flavor incorporated. Personally, it doesn't appeal, but the person bought it because the influencer, they said, that influencer is me. That influencer is a mom who has a picky partner who's trying to lose weight and is really struggling. And she said that this product works and helps her. So therefore, I think it will work and help me, because she made that connection between this person and her. So that was really interesting, and actually kind of really reinforced that idea that that's how influencers work. People either identify with them or have some aspect of aligning up with them. And then they trust them because they feel that they know them.
Yeah. Actually, one product or one product or brand that comes to mind when we talk about how foodies kind of have their own already like self um like completed sense of like values of food-based values and stuff, and they only really purchase it if it does fit into their lifestyles. um yeah, one product or brand that comes to mind is Ninja. Ninja
Mm.
Crispy, Ninja Creamy, they have been absolutely blowing up online. Influencers are promoting it left and right. People are getting influenced by it left and right. Yeah, give us a little bit of insight there if you have it. What in particular do people, the consumers of Ninja, see in the product?
Well, I'm not as familiar with that campaign or with Ninja as the product. Um, so I'm gonna speak on based on other examples that I've kind of seen.
Sure.
So like when I did my research, every single respondent had coconut oil in their cabinet, and that's not like a staple. That's not a staple pantry item for the Scottish diet in particular, because mine were all based in Scotland. Butter, yes, absolutely. Coconut oil, that's more like Afro-Caribbean, kind of like different cultural context that you typically see that in. But people were trying it because they were being sold on it based on things like It's a new flavor. Um, it's a new way to get a different type of um, uh, health into your diet. And actually, it was being touted almost as a health thing. But and this is a bit of an aside, but one of the respondents was a doctor in my study who actually said, but there's no evidence that coconut oil is actually good for us. And actually, British Heart and Stroke Association actually kind of has flagged it as a bit of a, you shouldn't be over consuming this type food. So with the Ninja, I imagine what they're doing right is that they're kind of promoting themselves in a way that consumers can see the benefits, even if they aren't, maybe they are or aren't real to an extent. Like people will see, okay, I can make food more quickly. I can make food that has a different texture or flavor, because air fryers are quite big here as well. And the main selling point with that is that you get that crispy texture without too much fat, right?
Yeah, and I think with the Ninja Crispy as well, the way it works is not like a regular air fryer where you have the tub and you have to take the food out of the tub and you've got to like clean it right after, or you put like aluminum foil underneath. But with the Ninja Crispy, you basically just attach the little contraption thing onto like a glass container that
I feel
is
like
by
you've
the
drunk the
brands.
Kool-Aid, Marie. I feel like you want this product, don't you? You're just like, this is a good product.
Just a little bit. I will admit I have had my eyes on the Ninja Creamy, which is to like make ice cream, but that's because
Ooh.
I just want to create all sorts of weird wacky ice creams.
Yeah, and you think, oh, I want to try different flavors that they wouldn't actually sell to me in the shop, or maybe I have a
Yeah,
favorite flavor that's hard to.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's that thing. It's like that you've pictured in your house, and like customizability also is really important to consumers now. I want to be able to do something that's specific to me, or like I see how that product that machine could make my life easier in a way, or how it might inspire me. That's kind of like that idea of like appealing to the consumer's best self. So you're not appealing to who they are today, the person who like struggles to make a home meal and like struggles to keep their house clean, and has this idea of themselves as somebody who makes their own ice cream. But you're appealing to the person who they want to be. I want to be that domestic goddess. Like I want to be that gastronomic genius. Like who knows? Maybe I'll come up with like the best flavor combination ever. You want to appeal to that best sense of ourselves. Who can I be if I have this thing? What will my life be like if I have this thing? How will it be better in some way?
Yeah, I think you've actually hit the nail on the head right there. Like with the Ninja Crispy, the little glass Tupperware where you can just like pop a lid on and your meal prep is done and you don't have to like reharm them or anything like that. That really appeals to a lot of home cooks themselves.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. It's been absolutely insightful there. But all in all, what would you say entrepreneurs and businesses should consider when determining if influencer marketing is really right for their business?
I think if you can find find the influencer. Like if you work with a social media marketing agency, they're going to scope out different influencers for you. They're going to find somebody who they think is going to work well. But you can do that. You could do that with a degree of confidence just by looking at a person's socials and seeing, does this track with my brand? Is this somebody that I want involved with my brand? Pricing as well, because I noticed there were a few questions around pricing around this, and it really depends genuinely. Like, and influencers going rates are changing all the time, but I would maybe do some research and ask different influencers, do like you would hiring any service, get a number of quotes from a number of different people. If somebody has a much higher quote than somebody else, ask them to justify it, just that you understand it a bit better. What is their reach? What is their engagement like? And not just like how many shares they have or how many reposts they have, but like, how are they actually talking with people in the comments? Because it's almost like hiring somebody on. You want to make sure that this person, if you were hiring them to be front of house for your restaurant, if you were hiring them to answer, okay, this doesn't happen so much, but like answer the phones at the office, you, you would want to make sure that that person can do that job. So like, look at how they talk to their audience. Look at how they engage with them. Is this somebody who has a good tone? Is this somebody who actively pays attention? How do they handle it when somebody has a negative comment? Do they go on the attack, or do they handle it diplomatically? Is that who you want representing you? If
Yeah.
so, then explore further. If not, back away. Not worth the hassle.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think now would be a really good time to go into the break segments. And today we're doing questions from the internet, where we pose burning questions from netizens to you, our digital marketing expert, for your insight and advice. So the first question I have here is, tips for digital marketing for a small kitchen making business, please. We are a small UK company making bespoke kitchen and built-in furniture, targeting wealthier customers, either directly or via interior designers and architects. What channels or platforms should we use, and what type of content should we make?
Okay, so the first thing is to kind of understand who your audience is and where they are. So depending on where you are and what cities you have close by, you can check out and see, okay, are there groups online that I can get involved with that are already there, that are already going to appeal to my audience? So like, for instance, in Edinburgh, there is like a few different Edinburgh-based groups, and like some of them are quite exclusive. So there's like a higher end kind of women with money type Facebook group. I can't remember the name of it. Probably not appropriate for me to cite it here either, because I'm not part of it. But you kind of have to be invited into that. So you'd want to like see, okay, who do I know in that network who could potentially invite me in and get me in, and or find somebody, like, use your customers. If you have somebody who was really happy with what you did, then you should be finding a way to ask them to leave a review or to leave an experience, like, and you'll see like different people do this kind of automatically. If you're not already doing this, then find some way to get somebody to kind of track before and after shots of kitchens for clients who are really happy, and see if you can kind of post a story and maybe either tag this person in or ask them to write a testimonial, depending on what they're comfortable with. So that you're starting to create and generate that content. You could even do like a follow along with me video where you show, if you have installers, show how courteous they are, show what steps they take to make sure that somebody's home is well looked after. Like, show them that process, show them who you are. Maybe even to consider doing some educational content that can show why your product is superior. Because if you have something that has a higher price point, you might want to justify that to the audience. And you want to find like talking points that are going to resound with the consumers. So you might think that one of the reasons why people will come to you is like that aspect of like quality and service. But if you drill down a bit further into what your consumers want, you might find out that actually there are things that they value with that you might not have anticipated. So I think having discussions with your consumers, working out what they really value is really key and critical. And I think everybody in your organization should kind of be primed to be paying attention to that if you can. So it's kind of about leveraging your people to then start understanding what messages might resound with your audience so that you can put them online and then start tracking the responses and build up from there. So digital marketing is often like a suck it and see type of thing. Like, so my husband is a digital marketer. He kind of, his specialty is Amazon, optimizing Amazon sales. And quite often he is kind of testing and tweaking as he goes and seeing what tracks, and like looking at the competition, seeing what they're doing, how it's working out. AI is a big thing. So he'll be like looking at and trying to spot AI generated content and seeing what works well, what doesn't work well. How can we do this better? He's experimented with AI to see how do they write copy. So just having a play with things can be really valuable, and pay attention to it. If you can, if you're a small business, I think that's how you can get things going. So for the kitchen guys, look out, see what might track online, play around a little bit with different content, and see what gets like kind of engagement. What are people talking about? and maybe start finding ways to have conversations with your consumers just to really capture what they're interested in, what drives them to your business in particular, so you get a better understanding of that. I think that would be my top tips. Nothing
Yeah, I think
groundbreaking.
that's some. I think that's some excellent advice. I mean, from what I've seen, educational videos on TikTok do particularly well, and also when you're educating people about why your price is a certain amount and the amount of work that goes into it. Which, by the way, a lot of people love looking at like the process, the
Yeah.
process of how things are made on TikTok. So like, it might not necessarily be your intended audience, but it's an audience and you could potentially convert some of these people. And also, bespoke kitchen isn't necessarily something that a lot of people go like off the top of their head, like, yeah, I need that. But, if you break it down for them, what are the benefits that you can get out of it? Like, is making a bespoke kitchen somehow going to get you like a better value for your money in the long run than, let's say, a non-bespoke kitchen? Then people might be convinced.
Yeah, and also be aware of like what your competitors are doing. So like, what are the options for people when they're buying a kitchen? Like
Yeah.
go to your local hardware store and pick out your kitchen and buy it from them, in which case it's going to come like on the back of a shipping container. It's not going to be, let's face it, like yeah, there's been a bit of a down, in my opinion, as somebody who does a lot of DIY, there's been a bit of a downshift in terms of quality for a lot of the DIY stores in terms of their products. So like, you play up that quality aspect, but you have to kind of educate people a wee bit. Also, like people might be really keen to give it a go and to have a go at different skills, but like, show the craftsmanship. Like it is not easy to cut a counter.
Yeah.
And it's
Oh,
very expensive if you're doing wood or a granite or a slab or anything to make it perfect. So, how do you make it perfect? And, emphasize the fact that it takes skill and experience and practice. And you don't want to be doing that as a homeowner yourself. You want a company that can do that for you, you know?
yeah, I think a really good idea, not to elongate this even further, because we do have a little bit more to go. But I think a really good idea is like telling people what the biggest mistakes are
Yeah.
that people make when they DIY kitchens or like DIY anything, and why paying for that is so important. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
but
document mistakes as well when you're doing your installs, because like there'll be, I bet you they have stories to tell. Like I
yeah, for
bet you they
sure.
have, like the time that they tried to do something and they found like a supporting joist had been cut and they were like, oh, we need to fix this so your house doesn't fall down. Like, those
Yeah.
are kind of things that people will think, oh, like, you know, I want that reassurance that this is done well.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question that we have here: should I spend $6,750 on influencer marketing or ads? A LinkedIn influencer approached us with a proposal for product promotion, quoting $6,750 for one LinkedIn post. His engagement is good and has worked with our competitors in the past. Is it worth spending this money on a single post, or should we just use it to run Google and Facebook ads?
Okay, again, that was a difficult question that I found to answer because I had so many follow-up questions. What are you defining as good engagement? Like, and what's the return on investment in that? Like, can the influencer kind of be really clear about how their content actually created a good return on investment? Like, did they use affiliate links that they could track? Did they just line up and work out, okay, what's my output and how did that impact the company's bottom line? Like, did the company track their sales over a set time and then saw a spike when they were working with the influencer, in which case that could be good. It could be anecdotal, or it could, that, because spikes in sales can be explained by other things. So sometimes it can be really hard to get the real return on investment tracked back to the influencer, but you want them to kind of justify it. Also, whether or not that's a lot of money depends on the location, depends on the size of the influencer and what their reach is. So I'd be kind of like, I'd be wanting to investigate that a bit further. So again, I think my advice there is not whether or not that's a good and sound investment. It's do your research. So you've got one influencer who's giving you one quote. Did you get others? Did you compare what their quotes are? Is the platform the right platform fit for you? So I think it was LinkedIn, wasn't it, Marie?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is LinkedIn the right platform for you? I mean, LinkedIn can be really good to reach professionals, to reach individuals, to reach businesses. So if you're a business to business, cut to B2B, B2B business, then that could be a good platform for you. Probably not the best for like goods and services to consumers, but like if that's your area and if that's the best platform, then by all means, let's investigate further. Is and is there some way that you could potentially tie that influencer's campaign back to an actual measurable, trackable metric, or like an actual, give yourself a breadcrumb to see how well this actually performs? You can't always do that. So I'd be asking the influencers things like, how are you going to measure this? What kind of information am I going to get from you? Are you going to tell me how many people are tracking you? What platform or what tool or what plugins are you using to measure this? Because like different platforms will have different add-on tools that can help give them a lot more information about their audience. Does the influencer actually work with any of those, or are they just saying this based on how many likes and shares they have? Like, I'd be kind of probing that a bit further. Is this influencer like really geared up to do this? In which case, a higher price might be justified. But I would want reassurance that that's the case. And I'd also want to really kind of say, okay, good engagement. Tell me what that means.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice there. My last question for you is, how do you start digital marketing for a small business with no online presence? I just got hired. This one's actually kind of a funny story. I just got hired to take care of digital marketing for a small business with no online presence, but I have no clue where to start when I actually go to the office.
Oh, bless. Okay. Yeah. Good question. I think I'm imagining that there isn't really a marketing plan in place, or a marketing strategy in place, maybe. So yeah, I think you need to start working out, okay, what do I actually have to play with here? How much time do I have? How much money do I have? What can I actually do? And then start the ground up basics. So where do I think we need to be? Also, I would recommend, just as this person sounds like they're just starting out, let's get you into some local networks that can help you as well. So, like, is there a local marketing society that you can join? Is there a local professional network? Can you find other people who are kind of in the same boat as you? There are always going to be lots of different networks. So like here we've got like Scottish Enterprise or different business associations. Find one that has people that are kind of struggling through the same thing as you, and work with them so that you know how to kind of build this up. And then start small. So like if you're a one person operation, the people who have hired you probably don't know what they want. That's why they've hired you. So you kind of have to work out, okay, what do I think is going to work here? Where do I think we need to be in terms of platforms? What kind of an online presence do we need to develop? If you're a small business, maybe leave off the getting online sales until you actually build up that online presence first. And then if you want to, you can look into things like Shopify or Amazon, or, if that's appropriate for you. But yeah, start with the basics, start small.
Yeah,
and then
sounds like a
scale up.
real fixer up project, which can be fun, but man, that's a lot of work ahead of them.
Yeah, really challenging. I have students all the time who say, yeah, I talked to this brand, I've been offered this job, but I'm not sure. And often the thing that gives people pause is the fact that the people who are trying to hire them don't actually know what they want. And even with the post grads who are more experienced, they'll say this person wants X, Y, and Z, and that. And they'll basically say, they need to hire a team of 10 people to do that. Well, I can do this. And they'll kind of, say, this is the area that I can specialize in. The other thing to mention for the person who posted that comment is like a lot of different platforms have their own training things. And as a digital marketer, I'd say like, don't underestimate how much time you should be putting into training and developing yourself and skills. So going back to my husband again, I think he spends probably on average about between 10 and 28% of his time either going to conferences or watching podcasts or digesting content to learn how to do what he needs to do. So, for instance, they had an issue, and this is sometimes ad hoc as well. They had an issue yesterday where, not going into the nitty gritty, but basically, Amazon didn't think that they had stock. They had stock. So he was online till really late last night. He spent like a good few hours trying to sort the problem, but then trying to find somebody online who could tell him how to avoid that problem in future. And that's what you have to do with digital marketing, because we are all learning as we go. Like, yeah, you can get a qualification, and that's really good. It will help you think critically, help you get a really good structure, help you get tools and theoretical frameworks to help guide your thinking. But in terms of like actually working with platforms, actually going to the platforms themselves or finding people online to speak about how to use those platforms can be the best way to skill yourself up. So like Instagram has their own training, Facebook has their own training, Meta essentially has their own training. TikTok has a really good training platform, and actually they're a really good platform to get to grips with, because they are the platform that social media marketing managers have told me they will use to like suss out keyword research, because TikTok apparently does keyword research better than anybody else.
Yeah, that's news to me. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that would be a good time to go into more of the day-to-day application of what you just shared with us with digital marketing. So my first question for you in this area is, what practices would you recommend employing to ensure a successful influencer marketing campaign?
Oh gosh. If you're a brand working with influencers, I think
Yeah.
just kind of like getting the base is important. So like we talked about, understanding the influencer, understanding their audience, choosing the right influencer. But then maybe spending time actually making sure that that influencer understands what you want from that relationship, and building up a relationship with them as a brand, so that they kind of know you a bit better, and then they should be able to kind of run a campaign a bit more effectively for you. But also that idea of, because remember, digital marketing, one of the strengths is that we can track more information than we ever could before. So what information do you want to track? What key metrics are you going to follow? Like, how are you going to gauge the performance of what you're doing? What's important to pay attention to? And also, but like, I guess it's going back to that initial thing of like, have a plan, but then go with the flow. What emerges as important? What are you learning from this? Like, it's a learning experience anytime you do digital marketing. So what can you learn from it, and what can you pay attention to?
Yeah.
I think those are kind of the key points from what I've read and from my experiences of working with digital marketing.
Yeah, and you mentioned before one of the biggest struggles when it comes to influencer marketing is that you have very little control over what the turnout is. So, what is your advice for navigating that? Whether it's situations of crisis where you get bad PR for it, or whether it's simply that maybe an influencer hasn't like phrased a certain thing. Maybe you're a little bit of a perfectionist, and this influencer hasn't phrased this in a certain way that you'd ideally like.
Be aware of micromanaging. You've hired this influencer because they're giving a new slant on something. So they've not phrased it in a way that you want, but if they understand their audience, that might not be the worst thing. Maybe they're going at it from an angle that you haven't thought of before. So I think if you've done your work, if you have confidence in this person as an influencer, let them get on with it, And then if you think that something needs to be corrected, then fine. You put out a message that kind of adds on or embellishes or reframes in a way. or you engage with the conversation. But like, you need to be wary of that as well. Again, one of the reasons that people, and like, this is a big warning flag for brands looking to partner with influencers. One of the reasons influencers are so effective is that they have that perceived credibility. Credibility and authenticity are really important online, particularly for different, like, people who have come out of different, it's that whole idea of controversy. Like, we don't want to be lied to. We don't want to be misled. We don't want to feel that there's some covert operation happening. So if you're a brand, like, you don't necessarily want to be jumping into the actual conversation that this influencer is having with their audience, because that does make it seem like you're kind of trying to drive the narrative, which is what you would be trying to do. Online consumers are fairly savvy with that kind of a thing, for the most part. Obviously, there are different examples where that's proven completely untrue, but let's assume that your consumers are not have a brain cell, right? They do have a brain cell, that they're not mentally, that they can think for themselves. That's why you've hired this influencer. So, let them run with it. I would try not to impact that, other than if the influencer is saying something that's really wrong, then you need to have a conversation with them and be like, listen, you said this, that's actually the opposite of what we want to do, and here's why.
Yeah. My last question for you about the practicality of influencer marketing is that, I see a lot about how measuring your ROI is really important in marketing and digital marketing. But you did also mention that influencer marketing can be pretty unpredictable, and sometimes it's not purely about sales, and it's really hard to pinpoint exactly. I know myself, like, sometimes I see an influencer using a particular product or visiting a particular place, but I don't necessarily like follow any click through links, so, and sometimes I wait a while. I think on it. I sleep on it. So how are you to know? So what is your advice for that? Like, how practical is it really to measure ROI, and like how deeply should that affect the moves in this area in the future?
Um, I don't think so. Okay, if you're putting money into something as a business owner, you're going to want to know that you're getting something back. So even if you don't have like key measures or metrics that you're going to measure, like an affiliate link or something, and I'm with you there. Like, not everything that we do has a track online, and our behavior online doesn't always match what actually happened. Um, so yeah, absolutely. That can be tricky to track, but you can look at, like, okay, what's our benchmark sales? How are they naturally going? And then you'll know if you get that uptake, and you can kind of say, okay, well, that's where we hired the influencer. And then 2 months later, 3 months later, we kind of got this uptake in sales. So we can reasonably deduce that the influencer did have an impact there, right? So that's the kind of thing that you want to kind of track. But like, marketing has different functions. So we'll talk about the marketing funnel, where like we just want to raise awareness of our brand. And that might not necessarily translate through to a huge number of sales. Or maybe we want more people. So maybe we want that awareness. We want more people talking about us. That could be one measure of a return on investment. How many people are actually talking about us online? How many people are actually posting comments, sharing to other people, tagging other people? That raises awareness. So it might not translate directly to sales, but the idea is that's like sowing a crop for future harvest. And then maybe we want that interaction, that phase where people are actually evaluating. So maybe we want, visits to our site to go up. And if the influencer can get that to happen, even if it doesn't necessarily translate to direct sales, maybe we take that as a win. If our product is complex, if it's high risk in any way, financial risk, performance risk, maybe it's difficult to integrate into our lives, maybe it requires a lot of education to use effectively, then maybe that's the goal that we want to track to, and those are kind of measures that we could take. Or we just want people to join our mailing list. So maybe we get the influencer to kind of do a bit, asking people to sign up. Maybe we offer a competition. if you guys sign up to this mailing list with this brand, like somebody's going to win an X. Those can be ways to get to get measures into how effective this influencer is, how effective this campaign is, that don't necessarily tie to sales, but can kind of tell us, is this giving us more traffic? Is it giving us more views? Is it giving us more interest?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think like I've taken away so much from this. I feel like, we've all kind of learned that influencer marketing might not necessarily be necessary. And it also might not, but it might not particularly generate revenue directly, but it can be a small piece of the puzzle to get you where you want to be. And that is saying it in the most abstract sense, of course. I'm trying to be as general as possible, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much, Kristen, for sharing your expertise with us. I've really appreciated it. Now let's move on to the open mic segment, and this will be your chance to talk about anything that you're passionate about, and it doesn't have to be related to the topic. So the floor's entirely yours. Take it away.
Oh, see, again, another intimidating thing, because what do I actually choose? Um, yeah, I think sustainability is a big thing. And I'm just going to kind of do a little plug in here to get people thinking. Um, okay, we think about our energies, we think about our output a lot. How many miles am I driving? How much am I consuming? How much waste am I producing? But one of the areas that's kind of often goes unnoticed is our social media. Social media takes up a lot of energy, so we don't see. It's like electric cars. We don't see the emissions at the point of use, but like huge networks, huge servers are operating with our data right now. Anytime that I'm online listening to things, that's taking up a lot of data. AI is huge for energy use. Like AI takes up a lot of energy, and experts in the fields have kind of said, if we want to reduce emissions and if we want to be sustainable, AI might completely disrupt our targets. But yeah, there are different like calculators that you can go on online to look and see what your actual carbon footprint is in terms of your social media use. They can be kind of nifty tools, but I think if I have a blank slate platform to talk to people about anything, I kind of encourage people to step away from doom scrolling. I don't think it helps us mentally. I don't think it helps us physically, but I think it also has a cost on the environment that we often don't see. So I think if you're going to consume media, and I myself am guilty of this, I'll have music on in the background while I'm working sometimes, or occasionally ASMR videos, because there's something about people like doing background noise that soothes me. I think we kind of should be looking to reduce that. So I think I'd probably encourage people to just consider what their carbon, if you're thinking about your carbon footprint, and I know some people are like, but for those of us who are concerned about that and want to see less waste in the world, then maybe we should be thinking about that a little bit.
Yeah, and this is coming from a digital marketing lecturer, guys. So, well, that was an excellent use of the open mic. So, thank you very much once again for joining the show. I really appreciate it. Now, where can our listeners go if they want to find out more about you and what they do and what you do?
Yeah. Thank you, Marie. Yeah. Thanks again for having me. It's been a real pleasure. Well, right now, this is an area where a digital marketer really needs to up her game. But right now, the main platform that you can get me on is LinkedIn. That's kind of my professional profile page, and I'm getting more active on there, and will be more active. Or you can go to the university's staff pages, Heriot Watt, and you can see all my research outputs and speaking engagements will be posted there as well as they become available. But you can always just email me directly as well. And my contact details are on LinkedIn and on the university website.
Fantastic. We'll leave those in the show notes. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thank you so much.